This book is definitely a fairy tale for adults in the best possible way. You're about to watch me read The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer. I'll be updating you periodically with my thoughts as I'm reading the book. I think I had pretty high expectations for The Lost Story. It just seems like it has that little magical, whimsical vibe that I got from reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, or even like the Emilie Wendell series. It just kind of seems like it might have that vibe to it, especially like looking at the cover. I'm hoping that the writing will do it justice as well. I've never read anything from this author, but I definitely expect it to be really good and really fun. Maybe not a 5-star, maybe I'm expecting around a 4-star, but either way, I think it's going to be very magical. So from my understanding, The Lost Story follows along a couple of boys, and I feel like maybe there's going to be like 2 timelines or something. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like there'll be 2 timelines. And the reason I think that is because the way I understand it, the story, these boys were like best of best friends, and they ended up going missing for like 6 months, I believe. And they ended up actually in this like magical forest kind of area. And then 6 months later, I guess they left, and only one of them remembered it. And everybody else just thought that the boys went missing, no one could find them, and then they couldn't remember what happened. And so nobody really knows what happened except for that one boy who does remember, but no one's gonna believe him. And then on the other side, and this is why I think that there's gonna be 2 timelines concurrently in this story, is because it's also going to be when they're adults, and one of the characters is a private investigator, and somebody's sister, I believe, goes missing in that same forest. And so investigating to find out like where did she go, the one guy who knows, like, she must have ended up in this like magical world, but everybody else is like, oh my goodness, like what happened? Like this happened to our kids like so many years ago, like panicking, like is this the same person who like kidnapped them? Nobody knows. And so yeah, that's kind of like what I think that the story is about, and kind of how it's going to be laid out and how it's going to look. So we'll see if I'm right, but I'm excited nonetheless. So without further ado, let's read The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer. But wait, we know the drill. Hardcover, dust cover has got to come off first. So because this is a book with a month book, I do expect there to just be like the little stamp, and I think the color under it is going to be blue. So let's find out. Oh, look, little stars on the back. That's cute. Okay. Okay, it looks blue. And it's got a little stamp. So let's read this book for real now. I'm more than 100 pages into The Lost Story, and here are my thoughts so far. This book is exactly what I thought it was gonna be, and I love that when books meet my expectations, so it's definitely hitting the mark. It is very fairy tale-esque. There are these kind of like interludes throughout where you get like the storyteller's corner, where it's literally like the narrator and is like, you know, I understand where this character's coming from, or it's like giving you little hints about like pay attention to 3s, and I'm like, ooh, 3s is my favorite number. Or at one point, the next like one of the ones I just opened up for this chapter was like, you know, Jeremy wasn't really telling you a very good point of the story, so you can read the next chapter to find out what actually happened, or you could skip it. It's completely up to you. And I'm like, I love that. It's so funny. It's also very whimsically written, and all of the characters that we have are very unique and very different, and the whole entire story is just like so fun to follow along. So pretty much where I am at, which is a little bit more than 100 pages, we are building that whole setup about like, because we know there's a magical world. That's not a spoiler. So now they just entered the magical world, but all that stuff before it was really cool because we're introduced to the characters, their backstories, and just like a little bit of like what happened to those 2 missing boys, which were Jeremy and Rafe. Rafe's actual name is Ralph, but everybody calls him, well, not everybody, Jeremy calls him Rafe, and he just prefers the name Rafe. So Rafe and Jeremy, best friends forever, they ended up going missing for 6 months. And then when they were like where they were found, so basically like Jeremy's like running and he's like carrying Rafe over his shoulder, and Rafe had like hit his head or something. So Rafe doesn't remember anything that happened. And then Jeremy's family moves away. So they don't talk to each other for 15 years because anytime Rafe asks Jeremy what happened, Jeremy can't tell him. And so Rafe is kind of like haunted by what happened to him. Why is he covered in scars? Why can't he remember? Why won't Jeremy tell him anything? And then he's constantly like finding himself drawn back to the place where he and Jeremy went missing. Even in his sleep, he ends up driving there. He can't stop carving and painting these like mythical, whimsical kind of sculptures and creatures and stuff, and he doesn't understand why. And at one point he even goes into like a mental institute because he feels like he's losing his mind. He doesn't understand what's happening. And then Jeremy, he works as a private investigator, and he's very well known for finding anyone and anything. He specializes in finding lost girls, and he has a really good track record for that. And that's kind of how Emilie comes into the story. So Emilie is our whimsical, kind of like one of our main characters, and I love her. She's so funny and she's so sweet, and she does not have a filter at all. She in a way reminds me of my dad. So she has no filter. She's very silly, very cute, and she's just like fun. She's just like a really fun character to be around. And she has a pet rat, which is, I mean, she basically stole it, but like that's another story before you read it. But basically she does a DNA test after her mom passes away because she knows she's adopted. And she finds out that she has a sister, and she's like, whoa, like I have like a half sister. And then like the FBI gets in contact with her, and they're like, hey, like can you like spit in a jar for us, because that sister that you're related to has actually been missing for like 30 years or something. And she's like, what? And so she gets super involved and like wanted to find out, like, is her sister alive? Is her sister not alive? Can she properly like hold a funeral for her, because her sister went missing at 13 years old? And so that's where she kind of gets in contact with Jeremy, whose like specialty is finding lost girls, and turns out to be a much bigger investigation than Emilie ever would have thought. And so Rafe gets involved, and now the three of them are on their journey to this forest where the sister went missing. And what's interesting is that Jeremy had seen the sister, and he was friends with the sister when they were all missing. Obviously Rafe doesn't remember, but yeah, so now the three of them are kind of adventuring there, and they enter the magical world. So I'm excited to see where that's going to go now that we're finally there, and what it's gonna be like. It's really fun. So I'm gonna continue to read the lost story, and I will update you when I get to about the halfway mark. So I'm excited about like what magical creatures we're gonna meet, what this world is going to be like, how the politics of it work, what are the dynamics, who's the villain, like all of this stuff. Why did they have to leave like so many years ago instead of just staying in the magical world? How is like Emilie's sister involved in this? How is Emilie involved in this? I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying this book a lot. So I will see you when I get to the halfway point. I'm now more than halfway through the lost story, and I'm definitely still enjoying this book. It is pretty predictable, but it's okay because it has like that fairy tale, whimsical, magical fun stuff that I really do enjoy. The world of Shenandoah sounds so fun. It makes me wonder, like, it's not confirmed, but it does sound like the world exists for kids, like based on the dreams of kids and like what they want and a place that they want to go and like kind of like call their own home. And so it's usually like people who didn't have the best childhoods that kind of like find their way there. And it's really interesting because just how magical it is. There's like a bunch of different colored trees, not the usual tree colors. They could be like blue and purple and pink, and the grass can be different color, and there's like the painted sea that literally looks like a bunch of like brush strokes of like acrylic paint, but in the water, which is really cool. Unicorns apparently feel like exactly what you think a cloud should feel like, which is like amazing, like probably like what a squishmallow feels like. There are these apples, and what's really cool about them is that you eat them and they basically put light in your body. And what's important about that is that there are these kind of like bad guys called bright boys. And what bright boys are is they uncannily look like teenage boys, but they're not. They have a bunch of sharp teeth. they're murderous, and they're pretty much immortal. And they also can't go in water. If they go in water, they pretty much poof, and then they go back into like their ghost town, and then they come back and continue to like wreak havoc. So they can't actually die, and they're a nuisance, of course. So in the ghost town where all the bright boys live, I think that this is a really interesting part of the book. And it's basically this place in Virginia that's like basically in the real world. You have to walk through this part of Virginia to get into like the forest, to get into like Shenandoah. Kind of like the Upside Down in Stranger Things. This kind of like town is also in this world in the ghost town, but it's like a decrepit version. And it's basically people who had unfinished business or the bright boys, and it's pretty much like that in between. When you pass away, you kind of end up there if you have business that you can't finish, and so that's kind of like why it's like a ghost town. And so it's really interesting to see the difference, because we've been in the town on the other side, and then now in the ghost town, how different it is, I think is really, really cool. And it's really fun to kind of like follow along and like see what's different about the ghost town version compared to the like regular town version. And then aside from like the ghost town, the rest of the places in Shenandoah are very, very whimsical. They're very magical and just like fun. And it really does sound like a place that I would love to be, because it just sounds amazing. So I'm definitely enjoying this book. I wish that Emilie had more chapters though. Like, we're definitely almost done the book, kind of like the main plot is completed now, and I wish that Emilie just had more chapters, because I really like her character. Don't get me wrong, I like Rafe and I like Jeremy as well, but Emilie's just so, I don't know, she's just so cute. I just want to follow her along a little bit more, so we'll see. Maybe she'll get another chapter kind of coming up, but yeah, the book is very fun to read, and it doesn't really take itself too seriously, and it's definitely enjoyable. So I'm going to continue to read The Lost Story, and I will update you when I finish the book, so I will see you then. I just finished The Lost Story, and this was such a magical adventure. I had no idea what the last like 100 or so pages were even going to be like, because it seemed like the main story was already wrapped up. But what happened in the last 100 pages was so good and just like so action-packed and so just like fun to follow. And I was like, I can't stop reading this. I need to keep on going. This is the type of book that I lost track of time, because I was so like immersed in it, and I was just like, I need to know what happens, I need to know what happens. The pacing was really good. The storytelling corner kind of like interludes were hilarious, and it was just like so well done. The writing was really, really beautiful. It really just painted the picture, and the way that the author is able to handle descriptions, especially when it comes to like colors and feel, like how things feel. She does a really, really awesome job at it, and it's just like perfect for this kind of genre, for this type of story. And it really did feel like I had been transported, and I can see a lot of the inspiration from the Chronicles of Narnia and how that inspired this book. And this is a really good example of a book being inspired by another book, but not copying it. There was a lot of really great creativity, especially with the different types of creatures. I personally really liked the Cyclops owl. I thought that that was just really fun. I love the description of like how unicorns feel, like how clouds should feel. That just really stuck with me, and I'm just like, you know what? I know exactly what you mean by that. And there's also the red crow that can like go through different, doesn't matter which dimension that it's in, can just go through different dimensions. Something else that was really unique about this book, and it's kind of sad that it's unique, is that there was a male-male romance. And I find a lot of the times when it does have like LGBTQ plus kind of like inclusion, it's usually female-female, never male-male, which there's nothing wrong with either of those, of course. And so I've just noticed that you don't really read many books that have a male-male romance. So it was really nice to see that, and it was so adorable. Oh my goodness. I swooned over these two. It was so adorable, and like they just love each other so much, and they're just like, they care about each other, and they always want to protect each other and just like help each other grow and be there for them. And it's like, oh, my heart. Although when I think back to the book, and I did just finish reading the book, and I'm reflecting back on like the characters and stuff, they were pretty surface level, to be honest, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And I think it's just because the story didn't really take itself too seriously, and it's not that type of story. So it's just like following along. There were some serious moments in the story, but those serious moments, they're actually handled really, really well. It's kind of like there's like comedy shows, and sometimes there's like a really tragic, sad thing that happens, and it's like handled really, really well. Like, okay, weird example, but that episode of Riverdale when Archie's dad died and how it was a complete tribute to the actual actor who unfortunately passed away. That is like a kind of a silly show that took a very serious, emotional thing that happened and did it right. Which is weird saying for Riverdale. I have a lot of comments about Riverdale, but I'm not a TV show YouTuber here, so that's my example as it relates to this book. And I loved it. I loved the complexity of the relationships and the family dynamic and really just everything that was kind of intertwined through it. I thought it was really well handled, and it's just, again, it's so fun. And that's exactly what I was looking for. It's a brain cleanser kind of book, but it's also like whisks you away into a different universe, and that's just like my favorite then. So I will be awarding The Lost Story a total of 4 stars. Exactly as I predicted before I read the book. I'm like, this is gonna be a 4-star read. This is a 4-star read. The only thing that I wasn't right about were the parallel timelines. There were no parallel timelines in the book. It all took place like as the story was progressing in 3rd person, but I mean, I don't really have an issue with that. I still think it would have been cool to have the parallel timelines, but I think that with the storytelling corner, that really just added that extra like richness and hilarity and just magical aspect to it. And although it was a super captivating story and I really enjoyed it, it's not like 5-star worthy for me. Like, I've definitely read better magical books that made me like swoon and like consume it in like 2 seconds, but this was definitely a good one. So if you like that kind of like fairy tale magic book that doesn't take itself very seriously, The Lost Story is definitely really good for that. So the next book that I'll be reading is One Star Romance by Laura Hankin. I like this last name because I can pronounce it properly because it does not end in an ing, which is always a bonus. So if you're interested in watching me read One Star Romance, or the original Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, or the Shadow Realm series by Brenda K. Davies, or any other book that happens to be on my never-ending TBR, definitely hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you like my new freshed up hair, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!